A writer named Jack has the opportunity to change his life and job. He has to supervise a hotel for 5 months and live together with his family. Nothing strange so far, right? But loneliness and alcohol make Jack do horrible things. In fact, the son who has the gift of predicting the future is not so sure about the journey. Hey guys, this is Afraid, and you are watching The Shining. Let's get into it. The opening scene of the film starts with a view of the great snow-capped mountains of Colorado, accompanied by a background that immediately draws you into a mysterious atmosphere. A yellow car drives down the road toward the Overlook Hotel. In the car is Jack Torrance, a former school teacher and a writer in his 50s, who is heading to the hotel in preparation for his interview with the manager. Jack gets out of the car and heads to the reception area, where he is greeted by the hotel staff. Once he enters Mr. Ullman's office, the manager offers him a good cup of coffee, after which the two sit down and start talking about the job Mr. Ullman is offering Jack. Meanwhile, his wife Wendy and son Danny eat breakfast. Wendy is very happy to go. Danny, on the other hand, is not so sure. Neither is Danny's friend, Tony. The child has an imaginary friend named Tony, the one inside his mouth, who speaks to him through a finger and in Danny's own voice, helping him in times of need. Tony tells him that he is reluctant to move into the hotel until the child has macabre visions of the hotel, which leaves him terrified. Tony wouldn't want to move into the hotel, but he wouldn't even reveal why. Ullman describes the job to Jack and reveals to him that the only difficulty might be isolation. Jack, on the other hand, states that some time in solitude will not do any harm, as he would like to write a novel. Ullman tells them that 10 years earlier, another man, Delbert Grady, suffered a nervous breakdown that led him to exterminate his entire family with an axe and then commit suicide with a double-barreled shotgun. Jack, almost amused, replies that this is not a situation that could happen to him, and that on the contrary, a silent and solitary job like this one would give him the necessary tranquility. However, this story does not make much impression on Jack, and he gets the job. You should know that Danny's friend Tony can show Danny scenes from the future and the past. While Danny was brushing his teeth, he asked Tony why he didn't want to move into the hotel. Tony showed Danny a hallucination of 2 elevator cabins with huge splatters of blood gushing out of their doors. Mother catches Danny in a trance and shows him to the doctor, but she finds no physical problems. It is clear from Wendy's conversation with the doctor that the weirdness with Danny and Tony's appearance began after his father got drunk and dislocated little Danny's arm. Now Jack has stopped drinking, promising that if he takes even a drop in his mouth, his wife has the right to leave him. The big day has arrived. Jack and his family go to live in the hotel. While Mr. Ullman shows the hotel to Wendy and Jack, Danny plays in the playroom and has his first vision. He sees twin girls holding hands. They are the same girls that the previous caretaker, Grady, cruelly killed. Danny looks very confused and scared. After a while, the little girls look at each other and left the room. The family is also introduced to the head chef, Dick Halloran. Dick is a special character. He definitely has something to hide from others and share with someone special. Dick shows the kitchen to Wendy and Danny. As he does so, he starts calling Danny Doc. This surprises Wendy, since she and Jack used to call him that way. This is the first clue that shows us that Dick is hiding something special. Dick is also showing them the storeroom, inside which Danny seems to have a vision. He is staring at the head chef, Dick, and hears his offer to eat ice cream. But Dick never said it out loud. He was talking to Wendy. Shortly after, Ullman arrives. He has arrived with Jack to show Wendy the basement. Dick is left alone with Danny, and they go to eat ice cream. Shortly after the arrival of the Torrance family at the hotel, the African-American head chef, Dick Halloran, senses Danny's abilities, revealing that he also possesses the so-called Shining, a kind of telepathic power and prescience. Danny tells him that he can do this with Tony's help. Tony is the one who shows him these things. At this point, Dick asks him if Tony has shown him anything about this hotel. Danny had seen something, but didn't want to reveal it. and he changes the subject, asking Dick if he is afraid of this place. Dick knows the story of Grady and how he killed his family. The man warns him that in the hotel, one can have visions of some bad events that date back to the past, but one should not be afraid of them because they are no longer real events. Danny, suddenly and in an apparently inexplicable way, asks for information about room number 237. Halloran, without giving him any further explanation, warns him not to go anywhere near that room. The following month, a beautiful sun is shining over Colorado, and Wendy prepares a great breakfast for Jack. During the meal, Jack tells his wife that he is having déjà vu. In fact, he seems to know the hotel very well, as if he has lived there for years. Yet that was the very first time. Time passes, Jack continues to be alone and thinks of a beginning for his novel. Wendy and Danny explore the big maze of the hotel. It is impressive and never seems to end. Getting lost is very easy. On a Tuesday day, while Wendy is making dinner, Danny is exploring the hotel on his little tricycle. As he's riding around, he passes by room 237, stops, and starts staring at it. He looks scared, but genuinely curious, and gets off his tricycle to enter the room, but it was locked. Wendy wanted to keep Jack informed of things that were happening in the hotel and see how his book is doing. Jack loses control and seems to have a sudden personality change. From being the calm and gentle writer, he becomes angry with his wife, ripping up the beginning of the book and heavily offending her. The days continue to pass, and the situation does not seem to improve. Jack is becoming more and more depressed and very strange. The lines seem to be down because of a storm. Danny continues to explore the hotel and has another vision of the twin sisters. This time, the little girls call Danny to play together, but Danny is terrorized by the visions he continues to have. He sees the little girls killed on the floor, completely covered in blood. Tony tries to assure him by reminding him that these are visions, like the pictures in a book, and that they cannot harm him. Later, as the kid goes to get the fire engine, he is called back by Jack to talk. Danny looks scared and answers Jack's questions briefly and dryly. Danny asks Jack if he would ever hurt him and Wendy, but Jack firmly replied that he loves him and would never do that. The little boy seems to know something and doesn't know precisely how to act. He doesn't know if he can completely trust his visions. One day, however, while riding his tricycle in the hotel, the child finds the door of room 237 open and decides to enter. In the meantime, Wendy is drawn in by the screams of Jack, who tells of having had a nightmare in which he saw himself killing his own family. Immediately afterward, Danny reappears in the room, very upset and with scratches and marks on his neck. His mother is convinced that it was Jack and takes the boy to her apartment, safe from her husband. Jack moves to the hotel's ballroom, where he has an unreal encounter with a 1920s bartender named Lloyd, to whom he tells that he has never made violent gestures on his family members and would never dare to do so. Wendy catches up with him, warning him that there would be someone in the hotel who would attack the child in room 237. He reaches the bathroom in room 237 very slowly, almost checking every nook and corner, and finds a young woman completely naked. When she notices, she steps out of the tub and seductively walks towards him, keeping her gaze fixed on his lips, showing off the feminine beauty. For Jack, it's love at first sight, and he can't help but take advantage of the opportunity, exchanging seductive kisses with the girl, almost forgetting that he's married and has a child. As the two kiss, the woman gets older and older and quickly changes her appearance until she takes on that of a decomposing corpse. As soon as he realizes this, Jack gives up the woman's lips instantly, scared and disgusted at the same time. He backs away and heads towards the exit of the room at a fast pace. At this moment, the child is still having a shining and can no longer wake up. In his mind, he sees exactly the whole scene. In the meantime, Jack, changing his attitude, returns to his room and explains to his wife that there is nothing in room 237. Wendy, frightened and with tears in her eyes, suggests to her husband to leave the hotel because the situation is getting too bad and she can't do anything to change it. Jack, once again, becomes overly nervous. At this point, Jack's mind reels. He stops being able to distinguish visions from reality and becomes convinced that he's being targeted by his family, believing them to be the cause of his failures. Returning to the hotel bar, he attends a party and meets the ghost of Delbert Grady, his predecessor, who confirms his suspicions and advises him to eliminate his family members. Dick Halloran, despite being in Florida, has telepathic contact with Danny and realizes the imminent danger. Wendy, meanwhile, has no more doubts about Jack's madness when she discovers that the typescripts of the novel are nothing but pages and pages of a sentence repeated endlessly. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, which means constant work without rest or relaxation is harmful to one's personal life and well-being. At that moment, she is surprised by her husband, who, with a crazy look on his face, seems to be striding along threateningly. Wendy, armed with a baseball bat, hits him and locks him in the storeroom, then discovered that the radio and the snowcat have been sabotaged by her husband. Grady's ghost frees Jack, provoking him to kill his family completely. He repeats to him how Wendy was taking over. In short, things an alpha man wouldn't want to hear. Jack took hold of the axe that Grady used to kill his family and walks towards the room where Wendy was. He would have killed anyone who tried to stop him. In the meantime, Wendy was sleeping. Danny, on the other hand, knowing what was going to happen, being in The Shining, wrote the word Red Rum on the door backward, which would be murder. If you haven't figured it out yet, Red Rum is a palindrome of murder, and after it's scrawled on the door in The Shining, Danny's mother notices that in the mirror, Red Rum actually reads murder. If Danny's mother had not woken up in the scene above, the boy would almost certainly have killed her in The Shining. Jack was at the door. He started violently hitting the door with the axe. Wendy grabs Danny and decides to lock herself in the bathroom. Fortunately, there was a window in the bathroom, but it was too small for Wendy. Only Danny was able to escape. Jack, now out of his mind, was near the door and began to hit it with the axe. Wendy was terrified, literally scared to death. And here is the famous scene that everyone has seen. Jack sticks his head in the broken part and says, "Here's Johnny!" He tries to insert his hand to turn the handle, but Wendy suddenly hits his hand with the knife. Jack pulls back and hears a car coming. It was Chef Dick. Halloran reaches the hotel with the snowcat, but Jack, hearing him coming, catches up and kills him with a lethal strike to the chest. Danny sees this scene in his mind and begins to scream. Jack hears this and starts to pursue him. Wendy flees in search of the child, running into some terrifying presence. She sees a bear man who appears to be giving the man a fellatio on the bed, just as the dog man in the book was playing a role of sexual submission with his partner. The open patch on the bear man's butt in the film simply adds sexual emphasis. Danny, pursued by his armed father, sneaks into the hedge maze, which he has learned to navigate before, and then covers his tracks with snow. In doing so, Jack gets lost in the maze. Danny reaches his mother unharmed, and the two of them run away together with the cooked snowcat. The next morning, Jack is frozen to death in a disturbing image that shows him with his eyes wide open. The film closes by showing a period photo taken during a party of July 4th, 1921, which portrays among the participants a smiling Jack Torrance in an elegant suit, hinting that his soul, like Grady's, is now chained to the hotel for all eternity. That means that Jack Torrance is the reincarnation of Delbert Grady. So to really understand what happened here, let me explain. The Shining was one of the first horror films to seriously raise the subject of domestic violence. Little Danny communicates with an imaginary friend who predicts the future, falls into a trance, and sees ghosts for a reason. He began to shine, that is, to show unusual abilities after his drunken father twisted his arm. The root of Jack's troubles lie in the fact that he, too, was once a victim of his father's abuse, and this led him to alcoholism. The vicious cycle of domestic violence is worse than any streams of blood flooding the hotel hallway and half-decomposed corpses crawling out of the bathroom. Jack Torrance, a former teacher and now a writer, after a nervous breakdown and scandal, decides to sit out the winter in a hotel among the mountains as caretaker. A great chance to relax and earn money. But the venture is doomed from the start. He brings his demons with him. Himself, his wife, and son, sources of rage and annoyance. For Jack, a victim of violence and a rapist, there is no way out of this triangle. The horror of The Shining is not that the hotel, built on the site of an Indian cemetery, is haunted, but that the closest person can become the enemy, carrying your death in the way of the destruction of your identity. My overall rating for this movie, on a scale of 1 to 10, would be 9. Have you ever wondered why a movie with no truly horrific scenes terrifies so many people? I don't know about you, but I firmly believe that the mix of music, interpretation, images, suspense, meticulousness, and mystery is truly perfect. Some still wonder why Jack Torrance appears in the last scene, dressed as a grand ball. Tell me another movie that after almost 30 years still makes people discuss so much. How much would you rate this movie? Let me know down in the comments. Tell me which movie you would like to see next. If you enjoyed this video, press that like button and subscribe to not miss horror movies like this one. And as always, stay afraid!